Welcome to Belfast Exposed, to one of our very special events as part of Northern Ireland Mental Health Arts Festival. The theme this year is Gather, and we are absolutely delighted that you can gather with us today both virtually and face to face here at Belfast Exposed. We're here to explore important themes. We're here to see and explore how the arts, advocacy and activism can actually be good for our mental health and well-being. There is no doubt it is our creativity, our self-expression and the ability to enjoy and participate in the arts that actually helps us in our physical, mental and emotional well-being. I'm thrilled that we're here to meet a very distinguished panel of guests who have lived experiences of working with and working through some of the creative processes that we're going to talk about. We're in the perfect location and the lens is very much firmly on the area of photography. Tonight I'm going to introduce you to Jennifer Willis, the photographer behind Seen to Be Heard, not just an exhibition but a campaign and a catalyst for change. We've Professor Mark Lawler from Queen's, who also is the Vice Chair of the All Ireland Cancer Research Institute. And we're proud to have Valerie McLean with us, who is one of the ladies and activists, although she probably wouldn't describe herself like that, who has participated from the very beginning in the Seen to Be Heard exhibition. Tonight we're going to reflect upon the importance of the arts, the importance of our creativity and our self-expression. And we're going to use this as a particular case study to actually let you see firsthand how being involved in, seeing the vision actually transform and evolve and manifest from an actual promise from Jennifer Willis to a very close friend, Cheryl Graham, that she would document her in photographs to the end of her cancer journey. That ignited her imagination to include a number of other ladies as well. So Jennifer, you're very, very welcome. I'm going to introduce you first. And when I asked you to introduce yourself, you said keep it simple, that yes. You saw yourself as someone who was dedicated to do something really important with the skills that you have, and that you're using the camera very much as a tool to do that, and but also as a weapon, I would say, as well, in this particular case. You have been fueled from the very, very start with a range of emotions, and we can explore those, because I think it's the emotions that actually drive what it is we want to do. And certainly from what I know of you, Jennifer, that you have been fueled by passion and compassion, but you've also been fueled by anger. And some would say anger is a great form of energy. So we can explore that later. Valerie, you have asked me to describe you as a wife and as a mother, but I would like you to say a little bit more about what you are.
Well, I would say that encompasses my most important roles. I'm also a grandmother, and cancer patient, I suppose, since we're here talking about that, and not really very much else to say about myself.
But we'll get a chance
Yeah.
to find out a bit.
If you ask me the right question, I'll give you the right answer.
As you can see, this is very organic, and I'm all about the authenticity of finding out what it is that drives people and what it is behind this particular project. Professor Mark Lawler, I met you through a friend, and it was really to look at the idea of how we could be supported in relation to Jennifer's exhibition, and I had Jennifer's permission to share 2 images and 1 poem, and you came back straight away.
Yeah, I was absolutely blown away by both the images and the poem, because it's really important that voice, Seen to Be Heard is absolutely the right phrase for this exhibition for this movement, because it's very important that voices that sometimes are not heard are heard, and art can be a great way of doing that. And it's also a really good way, and the reason why I got involved was because you need to have a voice that actually can go up on the hill, can go up to Stormont and talk to people about the challenges. And it was brilliant. I was privileged to be there with you on the day when you actually presented both the video and some of the pictures and some of the women to the MLAs. And that was really, I think, a moment for them as well to realise this is real. This is not, something that sort of is just, happening in another area, another region. This is real. And I've worked with patient advocates and patients for about 10, 12 years, and we look at different ways of actually getting that message across, and maybe we'll touch on some of those as we go through. But my feeling was straight away, wow. And you really captured, Jennifer, and I've talked to Jennifer a lot about this, she really captured the essence of the person. And that's really, really important, because sometimes people don't see the person. They see the cancer patient, but they don't see the person. And it's critically important that we see the person as well as the patient. And that's critically important to the patient as well, that they're seen as a person, a human being, a mother, a grandmother, etc.
Thank you. Jennifer, this plan of yours really was a dream. It arose out of a commitment and a promise. And that promise was 6 months ago. And I was introduced to you by our good friend Julia Darcy as someone who knew your work, and she wanted to support you in your first solo exhibition. Do you want to say a little bit about the commitment that you made? And we'll do that very briefly, because I know we have a lot to talk about. But what was that promise?
Well, first of all, Cheryl asked me if I would photograph her to the inevitable conclusion of her cancer journey. And once I started to photograph her, what I needed to do also was to find out more about her her treatment, her journey, what she had to go through. And I spent a whole afternoon talking to her and just said, Cheryl, tell me more, I need to know. And the very next day when we were in the studio, I asked her to go over it again, because actually what I was hearing was, for me as an ordinary human being, what I was hearing was just wrong. And I knew that the way she had been cared for since her primary diagnosis 10, 11 years ago, there were so many failures, and I'm going to call them failures, and I'm not going to mince my words tonight, because quite simply, what I discovered was not only had Cheryl been let down on so many levels, in terms of being listened to. She wanted a double mastectomy whenever she was first diagnosed. She wanted gene testing. All that was, oh no, we know better, And then 10 years later, she's diagnosed again. It comes back again. She asks again for a double mastectomy and gene testing. Again, it was refused. And this concept of her not being listened to quite literally led ultimately to the position that she's now in. I'm not saying that she wouldn't be in a similar position, but she certainly would not be as far down that road. And listening to her, then I realised that actually it's not just her. And she started to tell me about these other women that she had accidentally come in contact with, because it's until very, very recently, there were no support groups for women with secondary breast cancer. They basically had to do it themselves. And if they were in a cancer centre getting treatment, they didn't know who else was there that had secondary breast cancer. And for those, just for clarity's sake, when someone is diagnosed with secondary breast cancer, that is the time that they learn that their cancer is incurable. And so they know that the big red bus is travelling in their direction and they can't get out of the lane, okay? So that's the big difference between that and primary breast cancer. And I was learning all these things from Cheryl, and I just said, look, I can help. I think I can help. And I can, you know, help you to raise awareness, because you've got to get this story out. So I offered to do these portraits, and when I met the women one night, which was a life-changing experience, because I was sitting around a kitchen table with 8 or 10 women. Yeah, you were there.
You were there, Val.
8 or 10 women, young women in the group. The youngest was 35, she's now 36. The oldest, sorry Valerie, is 64. All young women. And I was sitting in amongst them, and I couldn't believe that they were, you know, just this real desire to live. But amidst that, they're fighting every single day to be heard, for better treatment. And so I offered, I said, look, I think I can do this for you. I think I can help to give you a voice by producing these very raw portraits, and if you will trust me to do it. And that's the promise that I made. But I knew driving away that night, I was actually overwhelmed with the thought of what I had just taken on, because I also knew that I was going to have to do it within a tight time scale, and to pull off an exhibition when I hadn't even a single photograph in the camera. Well, I had Cheryl's, that's all, was instantly overwhelming, but it had to be done. And so it was from the very next day, I just had to get on with it. And
so Julia then introduced you to me,
Yep.
and we set up, I rang you then, and we set up a WhatsApp group, and we just were relentless, and we thought, right, we wanted to do this within 6 months. I approached Deirdre Robb here in Belfast Exposed, the CEO, and I had your permission to show some of the images. And Deirdre said, look, let's meet, let's discuss this. And we had a number of the ladies with us, with Julia and Rini, I think, as well, and Helen joined us by WhatsApp, I think. And we had we were there determined. And I think Deirdre very quickly realised that we weren't going to go away. We were very determined that we were going to find a way through this, and almost like magic, Deirdre did create a space for us. We were very, very focused. It was quite ironic because the timeline was very, very fast, because we knew obviously the context that we were working within. And we also knew that none of us could work in isolation. You know, I felt my role was to support you, Jennifer, as an artist, but also to look at any contacts or anybody that we could access in terms of health professionals, in terms of venues, in terms of our elected representatives. We made our way to Stormont, not once but twice.
Yep.
And it was only, I think, the first time I was speaking to you on the phone, Mark, we had an opportunity to meet via Zoom, and we invited Jennifer to make a presentation to the All Ireland Cancer Research Institute. And then I texted you afterwards and said, would you be free to come with us to Stormont the next day? And luckily in Belfast, you were based, so you were blessed amongst women, and you arrived that day with us.
I certainly was.
Yeah.
It was an amazing experience.
It was, and I know that we were all very moved. That day we addressed the chair and the vice chair of the health committee, Colin Gilden, you, and there was the DUP, Pam Cameron. And we also had the head of publicity with us there too. And we had Julia and Helen and Cheryl.
Yep.
And you had fashioned a presentation with some of the images and some of the responses from the ladies about how they felt after being diagnosed. The majority of them had been diagnosed during lockdown for their secondary breast cancer. And you could have heard a pin drop, and we could hear the tears, and we could actually hear the gulps and the gasps in the room.
That very day
very moving.
was the first time I had presented some of the few images at camera clubs, etc. But that day I saw the power of those images on, our top politicians. And I realised then that I was hitting the mark. I hesitate to say perfectly, but it really had the desired effect. And to see grown men with tears streaming down their faces, because this needs to hit hard, because these women do not have the time for us to be.
And you promised as well that the images that you want to take would be dignified, they would be powerful, they would be compelling. They're pretty much life size.
Yep.
Slightly bigger maybe. So when you go upstairs after this opportunity to listen and hear from the panel and discuss, there will be an opportunity to go up and see the exhibition if you haven't already seen it, but come back whether or not you've seen it, and you really need to be still in the space and also listen to the crafted audio of the testimonials from the ladies as well, because it's very, very powerful. It's a beautiful combination, if you like, of stimulating the senses in the most emotional way. And I suppose the point that you made there as well, that, you know, the power of the image, without even words at all, had it really touched and it moved and it inspired without a doubt.
Because what I knew from all my conversations, intimate conversations, both before we went into the studio and in the studio space, was well, for me, a real sense of anger as to what they were experiencing, not from cancer, but from the healthcare system around them that has so terribly badly let them down. Of course, you know, I'm angry at cancer, but that's almost a folly thing to say.
And it almost was fueled.
Fueled by it. And, you know, it drove me on. Sometimes it broke me, and sometimes I went out to the car and sobbed my heart out afterwards. But there's a real sense that, and it's a simple fact, they have been let down, and my commitment and my desire was to give them a voice, and in order to do that I had to produce images that would make people sit up and listen, and that's
so the adrenaline within you was fueled by, I suppose, the anger and listen to the ladies' stories and the injustice and the inequalities. And I'm going to ask Valerie here, because Valerie, you were at that table that night in Renee's house. And I suppose it was an invitation to meet Jennifer.
I was on board straight away. I knew that something was going to have to be done. Jennifer brought along some of her images. I could see what it could be, and I was delighted to say yes, I would like to.
I think you were my first, were you? Yes.
You could hardly stop speaking until I said yes.
And I suppose too, Valerie, you love the arts. You really, you know, as an artist yourself and someone who really appreciates, you know.
I understood what the piece of work could be. Yeah.
And did you feel in any way confronted? Because I want to talk to you, Jennifer, a wee bit after about the process between meeting the ladies and getting their images, because that journey is a sensitive journey, you know, of trust and huge commitment and a beautiful dynamic and relationship. So in terms, you know, what fueled you to get involved in this, in terms of the feelings and the emotions?
Well, it sounds a bit trite to say, but up until that point, nobody had looked at me as a person. Nobody had listened to anything I said, and it felt like an opportunity to say it to the world at large, because it's not just politicians I think we need to get to, it's some of the medical profession as well. You know, when I was diagnosed with secondary, I had been called in the day before, and I was lined up for my chemotherapy the next day. So there's lots of things that they have to do before you start chemotherapy. I had an echocardiogram, I had a PICC line inserted, I had an X-ray, I had an ECG. I was 5.5 hours in the hospital to go in the next morning and be told, you have secondary breast cancer, you will not be getting chemotherapy, you'll be on palliative care. And I was sitting there with a PICC line and all those battery of tests done the day before.
And your husband in the corridor?
Yes, he wasn't even brought in, and this was pre-COVID, so there was no excuse. But I just felt, what was all that about yesterday? Why couldn't I have been told yesterday, don't come in?
Because the emotional energy, you know, to navigate your way between appointments, you know, there's the feelings and the emotions that go with I suppose, any physical illness. and our mental health and well-being is really, really crucial in helping us survive, you know, from crisis to crisis. And Mark, from your perspective, I suppose it helps us understand, if you can tell us what it is actually you do. I know you're based at Queen's, you're the Vice Chair of the All Ireland Cancer Research Institute. What does that mean?
Yeah, no, very happy to share that with you. So I'm a geneticist originally by training, so I look at genes, particularly in relation to cancer, and I'm a researcher, so I look at best ways that we can actually diagnose cancer and treat cancer. But about 10 years ago, I actually came up to Belfast to work on a very specific project, and the project was to look at cancer inequalities in Northern Ireland and Europe, and to look at that from the point of view of the patient, and to look at what could we do to actually change things, because things were really bad in relation to cancer inequalities, not just in Northern Ireland, but right across Europe. And so what we did was we developed a European Cancer Patient Bill of Rights. We did it with patients. Patients were with us every step of the way. Patients stood beside us when we presented it in the European Parliament at the time, in 2014 on World Cancer Day. So as well as doing that sort of research side, and also I'm a bit of a data geek, so I love using data, looking at data, working at data. I also realized that you have to, as a researcher, also be dedicated to what the patient wants. So it's not just what you want. So I don't sit in an ivory tower in Queens and just do research and then every now and again come out and talk about it.
You help inform policy. You mean you advise and help?
Well, I hope they listen to me. If they listen to me, I advise them.
Yeah.
But it's really important that, you know, we represent and work with patients. And gone are the days, and I'm really sorry to hear some of the stories, because some of the stories were pretty bad. But I think gone are the days where there's this patriarchal approach to medicine, where the doctor speaks down to the patient. In my viewpoint, patients should be not passive recipients, but active participants in their care. And unfortunately, some of you did not get the opopportunity to do that.
Yeah, you want to come in? Sorry,
really
Jennifer.
Yeah, I do, because actually I've now photographed 18, 19 women with secondary breast cancer, and they are diagnosed as recently as just a few months ago. And my I'm going to call it first-hand experience, because I'm getting it straight from the horse's mouth. They are not having, you know, that patriarchal system from the top. The culture is set at the top, from the oncologists at the top, who have been there for years and years and years. The women are reluctant to criticise them because they have to keep going back for treatment. But I'm not going to mince my words on this, because I have got testimony, first-hand testimony from
it's live
so
action
many.
research,
It
actually,
is, that's right.
in a way.
And every one of these women are being let down at the top oncology level, and then that is filtering down to even, you know, amongst nursing staff and chemotherapy and all the rest of it. So that it hasn't changed for these women. It may have changed for other cancer, but not for Valerie. I'm speaking as somebody that's listened to 19 of these stories.
How do you feel about that? How do you feel?
How do I feel about the treatment?
Oncology.
Well, oncology treatment, they have protocols. Your breast cancer's gone into your bones. These are the drugs that we'll give you.
Yeah.
But there isn't any empathy. There isn't any care that goes along with, you know, everything is just blunt, you know.
Do you feel listened to?
No.
Well, there, you know.
And that's why I think this is really important,
Yes.
because it's actually saying, I'm just going to show this to the camera,
Yeah.
you know, it's seen to be heard, because it's actually the voices that are not being heard. And it's really important that those, and that's why I got involved with you. That's why I came to Storm it with you, because I realised you weren't being heard.
It was interesting that day as well, because I remember me actually saying to Mark, and I wouldn't be that tall, obviously, but I remember saying, Mark, I hope you don't mind, but we don't really want you to speak, because these ladies are the ones that are going to do the talking. And if you don't mind, then we'll ask you maybe if you have a comment at the end. And you knew I was not, hopefully not, I wasn't being insulting. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't need a man to represent us. No. We were there with three ladies and Jennifer and the images, and that was the armour, and that was our weaponry. And the context then was, after, you know, there was no doubt that we were knocking on an open door when it came to both the chair and the vice chair, and actually the health committee themselves. It's an all-party representation. But the point was then, when I did invite you to speak, you talked about the importance of data, and this is where we found out the context that you're working within, because these ladies are only a statistic when they die.
When they die.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's the angle.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and I suppose really there's a number of contexts here. There is obviously there's the research to inform policy and practice. There's the quantitative and qualitative research obviously as well, but also too, it's not just within, you know, the medical profession. One of the contexts that we were talking here was about changing the culture, you know, to have a culture of compassion, of empathy,
Because
and
that
dignity.
will actually help the women. None of the women involved in this project will benefit in terms of clinical trials, of new treatments or anything like that, because they
It's too late.
aren't. Yes, it's too late. Thank you, Valerie,
So
for saying that.
you are fighting not just for yourselves, but fighting for the next generation. And the ladies, and you can imagine using really precious times, we've spoken about this before, time and efforts about this, you know, so even working on the manifesto was very much, do you want to say a little bit about the manifesto, Valerie, about what that actually
I still have to put glasses
You
on.
were,
You've
you
got
were
your
going to say
glasses.
something. While Valerie's putting her glasses on, yes. There's something else that I would like to say. Every one of the women involved has handed invitations, multiple invitations around their hospital oncology departments, the chemotherapy departments, and
They disappear.
they disappear. And
We've also tried to put leaflets in about the group that we're in, the secondary breast
a
cancer.
support group. This is
a
the only support
just
group.
a little leaflet that says we meet up every month. Here's where we meet. And they disappear as well.
And I would like to think that if I was in a profession that where a number of my patients were involved in something as significant as this in terms of raising the profile of the actual women involved, that they might pop down to see what it was about. Do you know of any? No.
And I suppose
We
the beauty,
don't know of any oncologists, and I know of one staff, one member of staff who works up at the Ulster in that department, and she came down and was blown away by it.
She came to the exhibition as well?
She came to the exhibition, but she came because she knew about it first hand because she's my cousin's daughter. And she has spoken to the sister there. They have tried to get through to the oncologists, and every other door has been knocking on an open door. And that's what these women, you know, so when you talk about them being listened to, it's not the case.
one of the things, so we went back to Stormont a second time. We were invited to come to Stormont for tea and buns and a nice lunch, and we were determined that we weren't there for the afternoon tea. We were there to actually make a statement, deliver an ultimatum, deliver a manifesto, which was larger than life, and this is the manifesto. You can see some of the points, but we'll revisit those, and you can share those with us, ladies. But the point was that we were there to hold the elected representatives to account. And as we mentioned before, the visual images, the testimonials, were the tool that was driving this in terms of the advocacy and the activism. And while none of the ladies would describe themselves as activists, it was very, very clear that these ladies, all of us, were united with passion and purpose to make a difference. And it was really, really very, very significant. You know, one of the things, I suppose, the beauty about this particular exhibition, and it's not an exhibition, it's actually a campaign. You mentioned a movement. I actually would say it is a movement. It's a grassroots movement where women are protecting women or supporting women, and I'm not saying that there aren't men there as well, because behind every lady and everybody going through that, there's an extended family, and in some cases they're not heard either, and in some cases the ladies themselves haven't shared their scars.
Yeah, during each time that I've been in the gallery, where there's been maybe some family members sitting listening to the video, without exception, they have said to me something along the lines of, I had no idea, we've never heard our daughter speak about these things. Another one said, and it was a grandmother, and she said, I didn't know my granddaughter had secondary breast cancer until she handed me the invitation to come. And I just have to say, look, whatever you do, don't take this personally. Every single one of these women are, and they don't want to be referred to as, and correct me if I'm wrong, Valerie, as brave and inspirational and all the rest of it. But my goodness, when it comes to protecting their family and the people around them, the hurt and the cost of knowing that they're not, for example, going to be here to see their little 3-year-olds even maybe go to school, to see granddaughters grow up, to have the opportunity to have children. That in itself, and we're talking about mental health tonight, that in itself is like torture. But then put yourself in, when we go upstairs and you hear the experience, the first-hand experiences of the women, and I'm going to call it what it is, neglect, lack of compassion, lack of empathy from the healthcare providers around them. They don't even have anybody at the end of the telephone. When you hear that and you can't put yourself into their shoes, because we can't walk in their shoes. But if you try to put yourself even close and you think about what they're facing and the treatment that they cannot live without, and then realise that they're not counted, literally not counted, they're not included in statistics. Back to the data.
Yeah.
We have a commitment through the work that we've done. We have a commitment now, we had a commitment to include secondary breast cancer in audit, thanks to the first thing that we did up at Stormont. But now there's no executive, and now there's no funding. And when we hear the politicians spouting about protocol and all the rest of it, these are the people that are paying the price.
Absolutely.
And my goodness, they don't need to be paying this price. They shouldn't need to have had a photographer come in to photograph them, to enable them to be heard.
And the point you've made this before, Jennifer, that actually we shouldn't have to be here. There shouldn't have to be this exhibition.
No.
There shouldn't have to be this plea, this ultimatum delivered by women who are trying to juggle appointments, navigate their way through the daily challenges of treatment and sickness, and the emotional toll that takes on their mental health and well-being. Valerie?
One last, because I know I've talked a lot, but the word torture has been used by quite a number of the women in terms of what they experience whenever they are relating experiences in the healthcare system. And these women, let's not make any bones about it, they are dying. And it's just a question of how long, how good a treatment they can have until that time comes. But everyone with a secondary breast cancer diagnosis knows that they're dying, and they can't they describe their care that they receive from the point of diagnosis with secondary breast cancer, this word torture. It's like torture, because they're going through all this hell, and then it's made worse by, sorry, I'm not going to say any more.
No, I think this exhibition and movement, if you like, brings together the challenges of a system that is not connected, a health system that is flawed. And I suppose because we have, and this is one of the examples of I don't know, Mark, we've talked about a couple of other opportunities where we can actually bring together the science, the arts, the health, the empathy, so that people are not living, women are not living in a context of managing their lives through chaos. Mark, from your perspective, in terms of your role And I know you have been very keen to support opportunities to host seminars, bring together our health professionals, because this is educational. This is not just awareness raising, it's actually at the core of education in terms of educating ourselves, educating, you know, each other, but also using a range of tools. And there's no doubt arts and advocacy has that part to play. So Mark, from your perspective, where do you see?
Yeah, well, I mean,
this?
two things. I mean, Jennifer's highlighted exactly, you know, we now have a situation where we have a Northern Ireland cancer strategy that hasn't been implemented, that hasn't been budgeted for, and now we're in a situation where we're in limbo because of the situation up in Stormont. That is not acceptable. That is not acceptable to anybody that's in this room, but especially not acceptable to the ladies who've been involved in this movement.
And I know some of them are watching tonight,
you know,
because
and it's really important that all of you go and say to your politicians, this is not acceptable. Why has it taken nearly 10 years to have a cancer strategy building on the last cancer strategy in Northern Ireland? So that's one thing that's really important. And we need to, you know, tell our politicians, we need this to change and this needs to be done. And I agree with you, we shouldn't be worrying about protocols, we should be worrying about people. In relation to your point of view, I mean, I'm a big believer in the power of art in relation to both as a weapon, and I actually like to use that.
I don't apologise for that.
I don't apologise for that either.
Yeah.
But also as a support. And I think it's really important, and obviously as well, it gave the ladies the opportunity to tell their story. And I think that was really cathartic for some of them from what you said to me as well, Jennifer. So it's really important to get those stories out there. And it's also important to look at different ways in which you support different people through, for example, art therapy. We had a programme that we did down in the south when I worked in Dublin, where we actually brought over an art therapist from the United States to work with children. And what they had to do was draw a painting. And the painting was called The Day I Will Never Forget. And interestingly, it wasn't that they all drew a painting about when they were first diagnosed with childhood cancer. They drew a whole load of different things. But they had a huge opportunity. And what we did was then we did a similar program up here down in Newcastle, where we'd actually made mobiles and hung the mobiles up from the ceiling, and the parents and the children worked together to do that. So there's a lot of ways in which art therapy can actually help both the individual as well as the family as well.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I know we have Barry here from Arts Care as well, and again looking at ways in which we can enhance our lives and not wait until we're ill before we have to experience it. I suppose the reality is that we were working very fast. We had to work very fast. And Valerie, from your perspective, as someone who's quite frankly said you weren't being heard, what has it been like, you know, from that opportunity in meeting with Jennifer, to stand in front of the camera, the subsequent opportunities to write, to express, what effect or impact has that had on you?
Well, it made me feel, rather than, well, as you say, we're not even statistics until we die, but it made me feel like a person again, that someone was listening to. And I mean, what you say, we don't have anyone at the end of the phone. I don't think that's too much. If I even went in for a minor operation, I would have a named nurse. I don't have a named nurse. There isn't any cancer nurse specialist. There's no secondary breast cancer nurses at all.
I think there's one for the whole of Northern Ireland.
Paid for by a charity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't mind who's paying for it.
Yeah, well, exactly. But
you know,
that covers one trust out of the 5. So
And you made the point as well, Valerie, because when you go up and look at the images, you'll be struck by the dignity and there's a beauty, but there's a rawness. But you're really struck by listening to the words. And the point that you made before was about that sometimes you felt that maybe staff become desensitized.
Well,
you know,
I don't think it's that. If you've primary breast cancer, they can see that they may be able to cure you, but they know they're not going to cure me. And I do think that they distance themselves from secondary breast cancer patients because of that. And fair enough.
it's probably to protect themselves,
Yes.
I think, yeah.
but they're carers, they're in the caring profession, you know, and you're the ones that suffer as a result of them protecting themselves. They're not the ones that are living with this
I could take you into the
diagnosis.
cancer suite and I could show you all the girls there with primary breast cancer, because there'll be a nurse standing beside them. And there isn't, you know, I go there and sit there on my own.
Yep.
And that's hard. That is heartbreaking, because it's by accident that you actually met. You know, the power of one. You know, the story with Cheryl, and then meeting then 16. You've now photographed 19 at this
I've
stage.
now photographed 18 or 19, and by over the next couple of weeks I'll be up to 21, 22. And actually, one of the women that I'm photographing on Monday said that she regrets, because she was a bit shy, and she regretted not becoming involved in this project from the very beginning, because she has seen how it has developed, and it was done with such sensitivity. But apart from that, she said, Jennifer, I have so much that I need to tell. And one of the things that she did tell me just in the WhatsApp message was that she received her secondary breast cancer diagnosis. In other words, she was told that your cancer's incurable, it's palliative care from now on, sitting at home over the telephone. That's how she received her news that she was facing the big red bus coming. And many of them, they're still getting, there's still women in this group being told of progression over the telephone.
That's right.
And they're waiting. Now, we're again back to the mental health. The weeks, how long would you wait for a scan?
It's at least 4 weeks, because if I have my scan, say, the day of my appointment, it'll not be until my next appointment. They won't ring you up and tell you whether your scan's stable or not, because
so
it's at least 4 weeks, sometimes it's more.
So that waiting game, I'm conscious we want to have an opportunity to have some questions from the audience as well. I suppose really from the moment of meeting the ladies, Jennifer, and that careful hand-holding, the respectful nature in which you work with them, creating a safe space and a sanctuary, in fact, to the actual exhibition itself that was launched on the 28th of April and continues to the 21st of May. That has been a huge, huge journey that was condensed in a very, very tiny amount of time, because we needed to work fast. We wanted to make sure we got there before the election started. We wanted to challenge our elected representatives, and we wanted to influence the counter strategy. And now we have a dormant, for the want of a better word, but we still can't give up. We have to keep going, and this exhibition is the perfect example of a catalyst for social change. It's one woman's idea, a promise that was made to another woman, supported by other women and friends, getting other agencies involved. It is the art of participation, if you like, and the art of connection. So don't tell me the arts can't make a difference. Don't tell me that our arts organisations are not vital in presenting and protecting and caring and nurturing our communities. We are in a fantastic venue that is currently housing 4 exhibitions that is addressing everything from grief, loss and uncertainty, and yet the dignity in which the ladies have been treated, the dignity in which the community has been represented, the opportunities for education, awareness raising, and the experience, the creative experience, is life affirming. This exhibition is and has been life affirming for those that have been involved. And I know that I was gathering evaluations from some of the ladies as well, and I was reading yours today as well, Valerie. So from your perspective, what has this investment of 6 months been like for you in this context?
Well, it's a legacy. It's something that will be here when I'm not. And, for my children and my grandchildren.
So it's a brave and it's a very bold step, but it's a huge investment in time and energy and navigating the way between
a huge responsibility. And if there was one more thing that I would like to say tonight, apart from these, you will witness the strength and composure, and I have nothing but sheer admiration, but I am broken for them. And whoever is listening here tonight, whether you're in here or whether you're watching live or on a recording, if you're a politician, then for goodness sake, get back to work and get a new budget and more funding, recurrent funding for cancer services, but in particular secondary breast cancer services, to medics, to nurses, no matter what part that you're working in. Because until medics get challenges from other medics, from their peers, this has been my personal experience, then there is an inclination not to listen. These women are having to ask for their own files, their own medical records to actually understand their own scans and where the tumours are in their bodies. So my challenge is, if you work in the healthcare sector, get yourself down here and listen. See their images, but listen to these women as they tell you their first-hand experiences. And I make no apology for anybody that's precious about a medic that they know or whatever. Everybody can learn something, and you need to get down here and listen to these, or the next time that they're sitting in front of you in an oncology appointment or having chemotherapy, radiotherapy, having a scan, whatever it is, ask them how they are feeling. Ask them if there's anything more that sometimes they don't even get asked. How are you? How are you feeling?
And I think the point is that none of these ladies are defined by their cancer. I think it's very, very evident from the pace at which we have been working in supporting the opportunity to have this exhibition, but also the pace in which, getting to Stormont and back, it's like the road to Damascus, enlightenment, will it ever happen? But the reality is, and you've made this point time and time again, Mark, and that COVID has taken us down a route that none of us could have expected. But you had made a very strong point about COVID should not be taken over from cancer.
Yeah, exactly. Don't let COVID stop us from tackling cancer. That's really important, because we have had challenges, and I've talked about it. I've talked about it on TV and on radio and that, and saying that we really need to make sure that cancer doesn't become the big C in the fight against COVID. So it's really important, the forgotten C in the fight against COVID. We can't have that, and because otherwise all the COVID pandemic will have done is created a cancer epidemic going forward, and none of us want that.
But I'd like to ask, and if you would like to maybe ask a question to any of our panel members.
Sorry, if you don't mind me just speaking first.
Yes, please.
You mentioned a lot about the importance of the arts. Names when I first took mentally ill in 1983, diagnosed clinical depression, then it became a psychotic illness. I would like to share a poem because, as I've heard from the panel, stigma depersonalizes, whether it's to do with breast cancer, secondary cancer, or mental illness.
And the Northern Ireland Mental Health Arts Festival is about tackling the stigma associated with mental health and highlighting the role the arts have to play. So please share what you want to.
I apologize for getting up and speaking first, but I
No, you're actually exemplifying what it is we're talking about.
The little poem is called Mr. Fix It. And this is based on my experience in psychiatric services and not being listened to. Just as my panel was saying.
Yes.
So Mr. Fix It. Face up to your ghosts. Yes, but put the past behind you. Yes, but be strong. Yes, but be in control. Yes, but you need to manage your feelings. Yes, but time is a great healer. Yes, but pull yourself together. Yes, but you'll get over it. Yes, but you're not listening.
Well, that's perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. One of the things I want to say as well about the Northern Ireland Mental Health Arts Festival, I'm one of the board members, and all of us have had lived experiences in terms of challenges to our health and well-being, in terms of families. And cancer is not a million miles away from any family, let's face it. So all of the context that's been presented tonight, the conversations, this exhibition is an intergenerational experience. It's for children, for adults. We have to open up, not unlike the stigma associated, talking about mental health and well-being. Our physical, mental and emotional health are all interconnected. There is no doubt about it. Any other questions? Yes?
about this tonight is that that's raising the movement. And the advocacy of this is here over the other years. I think it is the right way to go. I've been fortunate, I know Jennifer very well, and I've been able to see some of these images as they progressed through their infancy. I came in early this evening and I couldn't believe how moved I was.
No, I saw you there upstairs because I was inside of the other room, I know.
Given that this exhibition is closing next week, where does advocacy go? You know, this needs to move on, it needs to be curated.
Yeah. We're going
Yes,
to bring it
it's
to
going
other
to tour.
places.
We've been
Yes.
talking about this, we've been talking about this and looking at opportunities
Yeah.
both in Northern Ireland and on the island.
We
Oh,
need to
yes.
get medics in to see this, and we need to get more politicians in to see it.
One of those tours into the heart of
Well, that's
we're
the plan.
trying.
We are way ahead of you. We're way ahead of you because as part of this exhibition and as part of the profile, we have connected with quite a number of partnerships. This is part of the Belfast is one of 5 learning cities. The Learning City status is a global network of 200 cities, and it's about lifelong learning. We have Derry Strabane region as a learning city. We have Cork, we have Limerick, and we have Dublin. We're aiming for there as well. The All-Ireland Cancer Research Institute, again, parallel partners. You have a remit for right across the end of Ireland?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So essentially, all the universities have all come together, and also we're working with patient advocacy. We had a patient advocate meeting in Dublin last week. So looking at ways in which we can really support this going forward, because I agree with you.
Yeah.
We don't want it just to be something that...
It's not for one night only. This is a touring exhibition of the highest quality. And what has elevated that quality is the fact that the launches have been here at Belfast Exposed, which is at the top of its game. And because of this experience, through the lens of an artist, the camera has been used as a weapon in activating, in raising awareness. And we are united with passion and purpose that this exhibition is not just to be in one venue, you know, and it will be the backdrop and the leading actual light for education, for medics, for a whole range of different contexts. And we're hoping that with the networks that we have, that there will be events to promote this. Jennifer's already presented to politicians. You've presented to the All-Ireland Cancer Research Institute there, and how many camera clubs. You actually, fueled by the passion for this, she actually then set up a fund, a GoFundMe, and literally within days,
3 days would
made the
achieved-
target.
Yeah, so
which
we're
was
very-
International Women's Day, wasn't it, around that?
I mean, what I really want now is for everybody to come upstairs,
And
bring your, get a drink, come upstairs, and if there's anything else that you want to ask, then just ask. And Valerie, you're happy, very
Absolutely.
happy to hear it. You know, the stories direct from Valerie. She gave you some first-hand stuff, but remember, whenever I started talking to Cheryl, I heard it from one person. I've heard the same things over and over and over again from 18, 19 women, 16 of whom are photographed up there already. So I hope that there's been some enlightenment. What's the word?
Enlightenment.
Thank you
Enlightenment.
tonight.
Yes, we've been to Damascus
please
and back.
come for the really important bit up the stairs and listen, talk to Valerie, and the next
And
time.
come back, don't just go.
Just before you do that,
Yeah.
can I ask everybody except the 3 of you to stand up? Please stand up, everybody, and give these brave women a round of applause.
Thank you.
No,
just
I'm
before.
not going to run for politics anytime soon.
Just before we finish, I just would like to acknowledge Belfast Exposed, the staff,
Yep.
Deirdre, the CEO, and all of the staff here, and Aaron, who is live streaming this event tonight. There will be a record of this again. You can access it on through Facebook. I want to acknowledge all of the ladies who you will meet upstairs, in both in hearing them and seeing them. Please come back again. Bring your families. Anybody that you know, encourage them to come. It's a really powerful exhibition. In the 38 years I've been involved in arts and culture, this has been the most important exhibition. And Deirdre and I have had this conversation before. It is powerful, it is potent, it is compelling, it is arresting. You have to see it, but you have to witness it. We do not apologise for challenging you. We do not apologise for contesting anybody in authority. We want to make sure that we can encourage you to help us make a difference.
To help them.
And we want to acknowledge Valerie here tonight. And I want to ask Valerie, before we go, is there anything else you'd like to say to this group before we go upstairs?
No, but I am happy to answer. Anybody wants to ask me anything, I'm very happy to answer on a much better one-on-one.
And I suppose really what I want to do as well, I want to acknowledge, Mark, your support from the very, very start. I know that you're very keen to be strategic with us in terms of supporting the networks, you know, rather than because we don't want to lose energy. We want to get the best possible venue next for this exhibition. We want to make sure there's an education programme alongside this that can be directed through your networks. I'm saying this publicly so that people remember, and that's on record. There's the contract. There's the contract.
Sign on the dotted line.
Yeah. But
Okay,
you know, we really believe that that is very important. So thank you, everybody at home and abroad. Thank you so much, and please come up now and see the exhibition. Thank you. I think that was good. Yeah.